Hey guys, wanted to check in briefly. I'm as big a fan of Caspian Report, I think, as anybody. They do great videos, but the most recent one they did was a little out over their skis. They were talking about China potentially backing an Iranian proxy war with material and technology, missile supplies, things like that, to embroil the U.S. in a sort of a quagmire and distract the U.S. military and policy elites from a potential conflict in Taiwan. I think this kind of misunderstands the situation in a couple of important ways. The most important, and the one I have the most experience with, is really its misunderstanding of Chinese foreign policy in the region, which really revolves around being the kind of neutral, sober party in the room that's willing to do commerce with anybody, but doesn't precondition alliances based on any kind of ideological alignment. This is proved probably by Iran more than anyone because the Chinese Communist Party and the Iranian regime have almost nothing in common, right? Especially in terms of sort of religious political ideology. So if there isn't an ideological alignment, what is the alignment? Well, the alignment is the Chinese obviously want to see U.S. influence in the region and in the world diminished. However, it can be, and they also want to secure energy resources from the region. There's been a lot of talk about how dependent they are on Iranian oil, and I think this is fundamentally just not true. They get about our best estimates are about 16% of their oil comes from Iran. That's a big deal, but the Chinese need the Straits of Hormuz much more than they need the Iranians, right? The Chinese also obviously import oil from the Saudis, from the UAE, from Iraq. They like the access to Iranian oil because it's quite cheap, and that's because of U.S. sanctions on it. But they're not. It's not like they're dependent on it to a degree that they are to the greater region itself. So their interest is going to be much more in regional stability and keeping the Straits of Hormuz open. So, on top of that, they just don't have the military power projection ability. That's not what their foreign policy in the region is structured around. It's much more structured around these kind of long-term political economic interventions through the SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, through the Belt and Road Initiative. They'd be much more positioned, I think, to do long-term economic investment, energy investment in the region. They may not be happy about what's happening in Iran right now and the loss of, I think, potential loss of an allied regime. But there's limits. There's very little. There's very little honor amongst thieves here, right? There's not a deep compassionate alignment here. It's not like NATO where there's some kind of a paradigm, a political paradigm that connects these countries. So that's sort of my take on it. I see this as much more a wait and see game from the Chinese, where they will plan to move in post war and try to rebuild in a way that suits them. But curious for your thoughts down below. Thanks.